Abhijit Banerjee. Welcome to Jab We Met.
Thank you.
We're at Jawaharlal Nehru University, your alma mater, and you're coming back for the first time after winning the big Nobel Prize for Economics. Congratulations and welcome back home.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
So what did Jawaharlal Nehru University do for you in your academic life?
I think it did a lot for me. In particular, I think it taught me a lot about what India was. I think that's a great thing about a place like Jawaharlal Nehru University, which was structured to attract a very diverse set of people from all over India. I made friends from, people who were, scheduled tribes from Andhra Pradesh. In Bengal, basically, we were kind of at Presidency College, we were a bunch of upper caste Bengalis mostly, and it was very homogeneous. Here it was just everybody was here. It was great. It was great to meet people who had extremely different life experiences from mine. And you get a sense of how important caste is. For example, in Bengal, in some sense, because it's so homogeneous, the kind of caste kind of vanishes because we're all actually from the upper caste. So therefore caste doesn't become an issue. Here caste is always a negotiated issue, something people would talk about. They will ask you your caste.
So you started your postgrad from here. You've gone on to win the biggest prize in economics in the world, the Nobel. Has that sunk in fully? How has life changed after becoming a Nobel Prize winner?
I think it's sinking in is a complicated process. What's happened right now is I know that anything I say people will actually listen to, so I have decided to be somewhat more, let's say, careful with what I say, since I'm given to shooting my mouth, and so
people have been listening to you forever.
But I think now they're paying attention, which is a dangerous thing.
Tell me one thing, when you were studying at Presidency or at the Jawaharlal Nehru University or at Harvard University, was winning a Nobel ever at the back of your mind? This is something that you're working towards?
No. I mean, this is not, this is the kind of thing that, there's 100,000 people doing good work, and then you get a bunch of combination of luck and being at the right place at the right time and a few little breaks, and then maybe you end up with something like this. So it's not like, there's no reason. I think people should not even try to think about it, because it's really like, in Bangla we have this expression, berale bhagge shike chhera, which means the food that's been put up from hung up, this rope tear, and the food falls down and the cat gets to eat it. That's sort of how I think about it.
This is the first time you're coming back to the Jawaharlal Nehru University after winning your Nobel, and the JNU has been in so much controversy, considered as it is now by the current government as the fountainhead of the Tukde Tukde gang. And I was seeing some of your past readings and statements. That's something that upset you very dearly.
Yeah, partly because I think it's unfair. I think Nirmala Sitharaman was a friend of mine. She was at JNU, my contemporary.
At the same time?
Yeah. And so, we were...
You knew her back in college?
Yeah, of course.
What did you think of her as a student or as a contemporary?
She was a very pleasant person, very, proper, intelligent. And I don't think her political views were dramatically different from mine. So I think that this is just unfair. You pick up a bunch of people. I think it's been mythologized to the point where the diversity of JNU, the fact that there were many people with different views, has been lost. And what was nice about JNU was that it was diverse. Nirmala was there, and so was...
You remember Nirmala from back in college?
Yeah, Yogendra Yadav. These were all contemporaries. Nirmala Sitharaman, Yogendra Yadav, me, we were all, and other people of other political views were all there, and we evolved. We all had different views. We were actually all kind of in the making. We were learning stuff. She was learning stuff. I was learning stuff. We were all becoming who we are.
Your Nobel has put the government at a bit of a odd kind of place, because you're of Indian origin. While they'd love to wave the tricolor and take ownership and possession, they also look at your past pronouncements and say, hey, here's somebody who's been rather critical of this government.
I think they should go back and read my pronouncements on the previous government. I think of, and one of the jobs of of an academic or an intellectual is to be critical of authority, because authority is always going to, they're going to do certain things, and they're going to, if they only get kudos, you'll never get change. So, I mean, I think of this as being, I was extremely critical of many things that the previous government did. I have no particular brief for bad policies in the world. I tend to take the view that, what's extremely important is our right to be, articulate, critical, constructive. But I think that to be constructive, you need to be allowed to be critical.
I'm curious to know, has anybody in the government called you to congratulate you after your Nobel?
Absolutely, not called me, but
forget the tweets. I think you made a personal call.
No, nobody's made a personal call, but I don't know that. I don't consider that as a particular. I don't expect people to do that. There are plenty of better things to do.
No, but Nirmala, as a contemporary, she could have called. She knows you from university.
I think that this is, splitting hairs. She did tweet right away, so I'm going to take that as an endorsement. I think the attempt to politicize is, in general, everything is the sort of is the game the media plays, and I want to resist that. Partly because I think at this point, what I really want is the country to sort of accept the value of professionalism.
Your Nobel Prize for Economics is an opportunity to relook at all your work and draw on ideas and apply them to India's current economic challenges. So I want you to first tell us what you think of the current economic slowdown. Why do you think growth in India is down to 5%, and what, according to you, could be a potential roadmap for recovery?
So I'll start by saying that, I think there are better people to say such things. I'm not a macroeconomist. I was not given a prize for being a macroeconomist. Having said that, I would say that it looks very much like we are in a Keynesian downspin, meaning there's not enough demand, poor people aren't buying. So if I had to pick one thing the government should do, is I think put cash in the hands of the poor, or the less well off, put some, through higher support prices for crops, through maybe higher NREGA payments. I think a bunch of money in the hands of low-income people, I think will start up a demand so that the biscuit companies won't start closing. The biscuit companies closing is a really bad sign, because it suggests
But do you think that if the challenge is to ensure that more cash is available, and some of the policy measures we've seen from the government have been the wrong ones? For example, they've slashed corporate taxes, which is welcome ordinarily and should ordinarily spur investment. But there was a Credit Suisse report which said that 90% of the companies will sit on their cash because they don't see the need to invest further in the economic cycle at this time. Do you think they're approaching the wrong end of the problem?
Yeah, I think that's correct. I think the government, actually, I was about to praise the government for having raised corporate taxes, which is something I've been in favor of for a long time, when they took it down. I was about to write an op-ed saying the government should not cut corporate taxes.
So you think that the corporate tax cut by the Modi government is a bit of a wasted effort, like nothing will come out of it?
They should have used the same money for, I think if you had to increase the deficit, which is what this did, I think they could have, roughly the corporate tax cut, I think the amount of money that was transferred is about twice what NREGA spends.
But the Prime Minister is on record as having called the Manrega a monumental failure of the Manmohan Singh government, saying that this is just wasted money. He says, because it will be politically suicidal, therefore I'm not ending it, but I don't agree with this approach of handouts.
We can call it whatever we want, okay? But I tend to think handouts are just fine. I don't think there's any evidence. This is one of the other inventions of the right in US politics, the idea that somehow Ronald Reagan and people like that came up with the idea that, if you give poor people money, they will be irresponsible and stop working. There's no evidence for that either.
But it pushes wages up. it makes it that much tougher for industry to find low quality, low priced labor, which in a country like India is a big challenge.
Absolutely, but it also increases demand. And if you look at what happened after the NREGA, one of the things that it was a boom. It was a boom created by people spending. And the industry cares about both sides. They want low wages, but they also want high demand.
Okay, so you don't like the reduction of corporate taxes, which your contemporary Nirmala Sitharaman rolled out with much fanfare. What, according to you,
she rolled out the opposite first. Let me actually insist on that. The smart thing the government had done, this government had done, was to raise corporate taxes. I was in a bunch of interviews where there were other people from the corporate sector arguing vehemently that unless you give us a tax cut, we are going to all commit suicide or something. And this kind of pressure they should have ignored.
You think they came under corporate pressure?
Huge. I was actually there on that.
What do you think Nirmala Sitharaman and Narendra Modi should be doing to try and fix the slowdown? How much of this is a Modi-made or a man-made economic problem? How much of it, according to you, is because of global factors?
Oh, I think it's, well, I think that there's a third category, which is, I don't think any individual does very much. I don't think the first order, the immediate slowdown is, anybody has that much control over or foresight. I don't want to blame any individual for it. I think this, but I do think this slowdown is a result of the fact that the government has systematically taken policies which, for example, have moved terms of trade against agriculture. I mean, that's a very simple fact. The flip side of the fact that inflation has come down is that our support prices are flat. If those prices don't go up, the farmers hurt. And they were hurting, they were complaining. Clearly they weren't so unhappy that they didn't vote against the government, but they were hurting for sure. And if you look at the terms of trade numbers have been sliding down. The farmers are worse off. And they are not spending money, and that's a very simple driver of.
So we're currently, sir, at the School of Social Sciences. This is where you studied economics. Correct. There's lots of Che here. There's lots of Bhagat Singh, and this is where you studied economics. You must have been a fantastic student. I was reading somewhere that you set like a JNU record for how many A+ you got back in college.
I don't know why.
One of your contemporaries wrote that in an editorial, remembering.
He may or may not be right, but I was a good student. I was a fine student.
You also have economics in your blood, as it were, right?
Correct. So maybe you're saying I was not particularly a good student. I was just somebody with kind of a genetic advantage or something. I suspect not. But
have you thought, if you weren't an economist and if you weren't pouring through data and numbers and maths and stats, what would you be doing?
I might have been a journalist.
Really?
I really thought about it quite a bit. It was one thing that interested me. I like the space you are in, which is, thinking about politics, thinking about economics, asking questions. So, it would have been a reasonable alternative plan. I'm sure I would not have been as good as you, but
just being kind. But the advantage of being a journalist is that I get to crash read your book, and I completely and thoroughly enjoyed it. Most books by academic professors are dense and they don't really appeal to the common man. You've used the latest cutting-edge research from the world over and brought it out in a fashion that people who want to understand current problems can really make sense of it. So what I want to ask you, Professor Banerjee, is about RCTs. You specialize in these randomized control tests. If they were to be applied to some of the policies and welfare programs of the Modi Sarkar, how can India's current welfare schemes be better administered?
Okay, so you do RCTs before you implement schemes at scale. So I think the right question from that point of view is what would I want the government's stance to be in terms of rolling out policies? And my view is, this is not a secret, is that there should be a bunch of trials, a bunch of well-evaluated pilots, where you actually honestly see if it works or not. you try to judge whether the evidence is in favor or against, or and we haven't done that. We have sort of rolled out very large schemes, and this was true of Narega as well. It was rolled out to 200 districts on day one. So you didn't really have, there was, I think none of our governments, neither the UPA nor the NDA, takes the idea seriously of let's try it, carefully evaluate it, and then scale up.
Do you think a big move like demonetization also should have been evaluated more deeply, some efforts made to determine what the response from the citizens would have been before actually rolling out a big bang move like that?
I think so, but that's you can't really do an RCT of a demonetization, so you'll have to use some other way of getting at it. But yeah, I think there is lots of kind of collected wisdom on that, and the sort of people understand liquidity well. I think they understand what happens when suddenly I don't have cash, so I don't pay you. You don't have cash, so you don't pay Disha. Disha doesn't have cash, so she doesn't pay someone else. So you have a cascading effect on demand. That's one of the...
How much of India's current economic woes do you believe are on account of that one move in 2016?
I don't know. It's too hard to tell. There's too many things that have happened, and I can't apportion them. I think anybody who does is just making up stuff. I think it could be. There's a bunch of stuff happening.
The government thinks that this is a one-time reset of economic values, that black money is not okay, not paying taxes is not okay. It's like a injection that you've put into the economy.
I guess I don't know that it fixed the economy. I don't know that it was conceived well to fix black money. I think the fact that a 2,000 rupee note was finally put back in doesn't help, because of course, and I think people were I think it underestimated how creative people were in, kind of finding ways to legitimize their cash. I think they were right in thinking that people were sitting on a lot of cash, but they didn't. The Indian spirit is very entrepreneurial, let's say. They found very creative ways. This is sort of was my instinct from day one. They'll find ways to get around it. And I heard that in the Calcutta Badawazar market, the price of rupee was, at the beginning, it was in the first few days it was 25 rupees, but it was essentially got to zero very fast. You could just exchange basically very nominal amount. You could exchange money. People figured out they got their servant to deposit some, their friend to deposit some. It all kind of worked out. I'm sure it was a little bit of a cost, and maybe it frightened people a little bit, but yeah, it's the kind of thing that I don't feel will... I think it more convinced me that it's a very difficult thing to pull off.
After you won the Nobel, we saw the Congress party do a press conference using your shoulder to attack the Modi government and say, see, Rahul Gandhi takes advice from the likes of Abhijit Banerjee. You guys believe in voodoo economics. So you've been put squarely in the center of the big political economy debate in India.
Yeah, I feel like, I think Mihir Sharma wrote, I think, a line that I think I totally endorse, which is, that if the Congress party, I think, asked me for some, numbers on, how much would this cost?
Yeah.
And I gave them the numbers. If the BJP had asked me for the numbers, I would have given them the numbers. Indeed, I think of myself as being first a professional. Before anything else, any of my political views, I think of myself as a professional. I think of as someone who will if you ask me a professional question, which is how much would X cost, I will not wait to ask your political credentials before I answer you.
So you're saying if the government of Prime Minister Modi, post your Nobel Prize for Economics, were to reach out to you and say, Professor Banerjee, we need some help, tell us what should we do, you'd be willing to offer them advice as well. You're ideologically neutral.
I'm not ideologically neutral. Those are separate questions. I am first and foremost a professional. I believe that my job is to get for the country to do well. if I would value the country doing well over, particular political biases of mine getting favored. Those are different things. I don't think of myself as, anybody who knows me won't believe me that I'm neutral. On every single issue I have views. But I would say that that's different from having not having a commitment to being a professional. I think of myself as being a doctor, and I know something. I don't care who the person is who's on my bed. If I have to, I'm a surgeon, I want to operate, I'm going to try to do it right.